I've come back to the country, and all I see is the Greens have transformed into like this extremely cooperative political organization.
Pragmatic too.
Pragmatic. They've passed the housing bill. What happened over here?
What happened is they thought that this was going to be their holy grail against the Labor Party and that they were going to shave all of the renters off their vote. And then the Labor Party turned around and was like, hang on a second. You're trying to make a bill that is aimed at homeless people and DV victims and the disabled, the truly down and out of society, and you're trying to turn that into, oh, the rent's too damn high. And all of Australia saw that and thought, you guys are fucked. And you can see it. Their polling numbers have gone down 1 to 2 points, which is great. I'm perfectly happy with the Greens having their little dogmatic 10%. But them creeping up into the 11, 15 margin, that has to stop. And it has. And so they realised this is killing us. Max Shayla-Bather was continuing on with it. We think this is inside baseball. We think it was just doing it purely because he has leadership ambitions. This annoying 30-year-old that fucks up every time he's in front of a camera. He was like, I should be the leader. I say dumb shit all the time. That's why I should be the head of the Greens. And so then. You should see the photo. It's glorious. It is Adam Band just being like, okay, we've got to fucking stop this now. So he obviously called, the captain's call was just like, nah, this is ending now. And so there is a photo of the announcement of Max Shayla-Bather looking absolutely fucking livid. And then there's Adam Band in the background being like,
But is that like a good cop, bad cop thing? Like they're both in agreement as to like, look, you're going to be the aggressive side. I'm going to be the cooperative side. That way, we can sort of keep both sides happy.
I think that you are giving the Greens far too much credit in the intelligence department. They are just psychos that all are in the same group, and they fucking hate each other. I know this. They all despise each other because they're all a bunch of narcissists that are all going to save the world. And so no. The answer is no.
So what concession did they manage to get? Because I did see Adam Band's, I read an article where it had the transcript of his speech, and he was saying, like, we've managed to get extra funding for housing, which is not based on, the profits from the investments. It's based on,
good
like,
work, guys.
So is that true? Like, how much extra did he? Because didn't they want, like, $20 billion or something? And a rent freeze?
Yeah, they wanted originally $5 billion a year invested into housing, despite the fact that the Albanese government has given out $9.5 billion just because nothing's ever good enough. That's the whole modus operandi. Not enough. Just chuck $5 billion in. Where does it go? How is it spent? Doesn't matter. Just chuck in $5 billion. That'll do something somehow, won't it? That's the Greens' solution to everything. Throw money at it. There's no other hurdles involved. That was the first thing. Then they just went down to, okay, $2.5 billion, because all they want is just that press release headline that they got of like, yes, we got concessions because we're making Labor better, just going into that narrative, yeah? What they got in the end was $1 billion. So they try and make it, we got $3 billion out of the Labor Party. They're talking about that $2 billion state spending thing.
Wait, so
they didn't get. That is not.
So they've received extra $2 billion of funding.
They did not.
Oh, okay.
They pretended that they did, because while they were blocking the half, the Labor Party gave out another $2 billion into housing, which is what they said from the very beginning of in opposition. They were saying, our policies on housing, we're going to be taking it very seriously, and we are going to be ramping up spending when we see fit in government. That's exactly what they did. But that happened in the year that they've been obstructing and fucking around with the housing policy. And so they just claim credit for it, because they claim credit for everything. But then when it came to the $1 billion, that's so good, because obviously, because this is the whole thing. You can see it in the two press releases. You can see the Labor Party saying, we are so happy that this is going forward. Thank you so much to the crossbench for letting this happen, because they genuinely want people that are struggling to have a house. That's what they're doing. Because you think about it, Julie Collins, the housing minister, Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister, they are from Housing Commission houses. They know that
isn't the coalition also want the same thing? Like they want people not to be homeless, right? Or the coalition is just
I think they don't care if people are homeless. If they aren't homeless, great. But if they are homeless, that's their fault.
Okay, got
Because
you.
they cut spending all the time. They cut all the government programs. This is why you needed the fund in the first place, because every time you put something on budget, the coalition goes through and goes, okay, well, I can cut that $2 billion program and give that to my mate to mow the parliament lawn. You know, they do that stuff. So what they got was this $1 billion concession. Now, I'm going to have to go back and read it, and I know that there's going to be a bunch of dickhead Redditors in the comments saying, actually, and they might be right about it. They probably aren't, because they usually aren't. But it was some program that the Labor Party set up. This was part of their $9.5 billion that they were putting money into that gives out cheap money to people that are building houses or, you know, just struggling with homes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's a mechanism that is nascent. It hasn't started yet. And Adam Band obviously went into the negotiation, said to Albanese, you're going to have to give us something. You have to give us something, otherwise we can't do it. And then Albanese was like, yeah, okay, how's about $1 billion here? Yes, we got $1 billion, we win. And so you should see the press release that they give out. It's like, Labor's is like, thank you so much to the Greens for doing this. Like, we're really happy that everyone's gone on board, because now we have a bedrock that is there permanently, that all these housing community organizer groups can go to and plan big programs of housing that they never had before. Now they have something that's like, there's a continual source of funding there that they can base all of their decisions off and start the process of building houses, which, as I was pointing out in the video, it's not just deciding, look, $100 million, go build, 100 houses. It's not that. You also have to come in with all these planning. You have to come out with a bunch of contracts with a bunch of different builders, contractors, developers, all that stuff. You have to organize all of that. You know, when they say, oh, we were just blocking the housing fund for a couple of months, there are these housing organizations that came out and said, you blocking that for a couple of months has stopped us from building, in some instances, thousands of houses, because they spent 18 months doing all of these very complicated contracts with all of these builders, and that they didn't get the money at the time schedule that they had. All of those contracts had to be cancelled. So it didn't just stop it for 2 months. They have to go back to the drawing board and start again from square one, because these cunts thought that they could get like a political opportunity, a little win for themselves, and make the Labor Party look shit when they were actually solving the problem. That is all for naught. Some of these were able to salvage it, like state governments and stuff. They could put it on pause, but a lot of these other ones couldn't. So that's a huge, massive problem. So they got this $1 billion concession for this fund that's on budget. So they're just like, it's direct spending. It's like, yeah, but it can be cancelled by the Liberals at any time. But anyway, that $1 billion is just going to sit in the fund for a year. You could put it in at any time, because it's a nascent program. Like, the program needs to be up and running. They need to figure out how the fund works before that money can be spent. It's not like it's just immediately going there. The other thing that they're discounting is they were blocking tens of billions of dollars of funding. Tens of billions of dollars of funding, because there was a $10 billion half, the housing fund. Attached to that bill was $3 billion in housing that was just supposed to be direct spending that they just ignore and pretend didn't exist. So, wow, you're already down, what, $12 billion? Then there was the other point, which is that this fund was supposed to could attract up to $9 billion of extra funding for these houses, because once that's in place, you have all of these superannuation funds that are saying, like, I think it wasn't Australia Super, it might be CBIS. One of them was like, you pass this half bill, we'll chuck in $500 million to public housing. So it's all of those super funds saying, yeah, we'll chuck in this X amount of money and this X amount of money once the program is in place, because then we can make investment decisions as a result of that. That was all blocked as well. But they got $1 billion. Well done, Greens. Thank you so much for your contribution of fucking up thousands of houses that could have been built. You really saved the day. Well done. Pat on the head. Hope that you elect Max Chandler Mather as your new leader and the leadership tension spills over, because he's going to do a great job at leading the Greens to greater pastures, I can guarantee you.
Wait, what's the incentive for the funds to do it, to put in that extra injection of money? Is that just because they're getting interest-free loans for doing this process? Because isn't part of the fund that's being created supposed to mitigate the interest costs for builders to build low-cost housing?
Yeah, that's one aspect of it.
Yeah,
how do you know that?
I think I remember reading about it before I went overseas, but I need to be brushed up on it. Because I feel like that's going to be a big added advantage for a lot of these construction.
Massive.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right.
Because as interest rates keep growing, that's
Yes.
actually becomes a
Huge.
basic impediment for not doing it.
That's a huge part. But it's not just that, Ali. It's also the fact that these super funds have written into their bylaws, because they're super funds. They have to get a return for their investor. Obviously, that's their first priority. They also want to do social good, because a lot of them are, started by unions. So they want to be investing it in good things. But you can't invest that money in these things if you don't have a mechanism in place where the government says, look, you'll have some of the equity of that house, we'll have some of the equity of that house, we'll split the rent. They can't do as much as they do it by themselves anyway. They do build affordable housing by themselves regardless, but they'll be able to build more affordable housing if the government's saying not only is it going to be backed by a super fund, it's going to be backed by the government. And then they can turn to their investors and say, this is a very safe investment. And it becomes a very safe investment. So it is the loan thing, but it's also, they're just going to be able to build more houses.
Well, for the Greens, better late than never. And you know what? Funny that Tom Ballard podcast has aged even worse after listening to all of this.
Okay, we'll shit on it. We'll shit on it. Make sure that you sign up to the Up Late, because we're going to do the same doozy as theirs. You pay us money to hear us shit on them.
Yeah, so we're going to react to the entire podcast of theirs, which is them reacting to Jordan's video. So this is... We're in the Matrix, baby, now.
Oh, yeah.
This is gonna be insane. So we're going to...
You really should have just taken the L, Tom, like you have your entire career. Just keep that ball going.
No attacks on the main pod. Keep that.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
You're going to get
make sure you sign up to our Patreon page, Friendlyjordies Podcast Patreon, to listen to us reacting to the entire thing. Someone suggested on the chat that we should do a video react. We might do that. We might do that. We might not. But we're definitely going to react to the entire pod. So stay tuned for that.
Summer's coming now.